A couple months ago, I uploaded my review for the first two episodes of Better Call Saul that premiered back on AMC+. My takeaway from the first two episodes was me saying that this could be the best season of Better Call Saul yet. However, I also said that this will be my only review of the Better Call Saul episodes until the finale came out, and then I'd review all of them, even giving the first two episodes a re-review to seeing if they still held up, and how much rewatch value I could gain from it. Spoilers, I still like the first two episodes as much as I did when I last reviewed it. Now, for why I'm even reviewing this episode, my main reason is that this episode has been getting a lot of unjustified hate, even being compared to Fly, which I know is meant to be an insult, but is more of a compliment to me. Since I've hinted on this channel that Fly is one of my favorite Breaking Bad episodes, and while my defense of it will be coming out whenever my Breaking Bad essay comes out, I thought I might as well clear up a lot of the hate surrounding this episode, since almost all of it is pretty unjustified. Why didn't I wait until my Better Call Saul Season 6 review to come out?
That is a good question.
The only answer I've got is because I like defending media that gets unjustified hate, especially when a lot of it is unfair criticisms. And also, I love this show too much for it to be unjustifiably shit on, so here's how the video will be split up. The first half will be looking at all the criticisms for this episode, and seeing whether or not they are correct or not. The second half will then be my thoughts and feelings of this episode, seeing what I have to say about this episode, whether I liked it, hated it, or I just found it okay. So without further ado, let's get on with the supposed criticisms people are talking about when people bring up this episode. Also, spoilers. Good God, I've never seen a more poor criticism of something in my life. I guess we should talk about the people who say this episode is a waste of time, which is wrong for so many reasons, if they just watch the episode. Firstly, I'll bring up the main one. This episode was about Gene getting Jeff off his back so he can't expose him to the authorities. How in the world is that a waste of time? An ominous character that has been shrouded in mystery has now got an entire episode dedicated to him, and how Saul can figure out how the fuck he can get him off his back. We also got to see Gene return to his Saul persona for the first time in months, showing a story that has been built up for 6 seasons now. Finally shows that Saul can't help himself. He's not made for living a normal, boring, middle-of-the-road life. The only way he can have fun in life is by being Slippin' Jimmy. The first 3 cold opens of the first 3 seasons were him dedicated to him reminiscing about his old life as Jimmy McGill or Saul Goodman. However, part of me wonders after this episode if he really gave up on the Saul Goodman lifestyle for good, but more on that later. Again, this episode focused on 2 very important factors that they've been building up to, and that is the return of Saul Goodman in the Gene timeline, and how Gene is able to deal with Jeff. Now moving on to the criticism that this episode is filler, which I've been seeing this word thrown around recently, and I'll give you guys the definition of filler. Filler is only used whether they want to fill in space, or if the episode is a waste of time, and the plot and or story doesn't progress anywhere. Is this show using this episode to fill in space for no reason? Well, no. I could give someone the point that the timing of the episode is a bit odd for this episode to come out, but it actually feels kind of reasonable why they'd put it here as well. This whole second side of Better Call Saul so far has been wrapping up timelines. First, we have the Better Call Saul timeline, which has been wrapped up marvelously with no loose ends. Then it moves on to the Breaking Bad timeline, which I'm pretty sure is what episode 11 will be focused on, since it is literally titled Breaking Bad. Unless the writers for Better Call Saul are the masters at trolling, I would assume that this episode is going to wrap up the Breaking Bad timeline. And then finally, there's the Gene timeline, and while this episode does feel kind of odd placement-wise, I guess they're trying to progress into the finale instead of having the Jeff episode attached to the finale. However, unlike Breaking Bad's finale, Better Call Saul's finale is shrouded in mystery. Like, people could predict the finale to Breaking Bad, because there were always loose ends that Walter had to tie up back in ABQ. But here, we aren't given much, and if executed well, it could be one of the best TV finales to a TV show to ever exist. And as for the waste of time, part of the definition of filler, we already discussed that in the points above. This brings me to my next criticism people have been loosely tossing around. Holy fucking hell, the amount of times I've seen this comparison is so much to the point where it kind of pisses me off. Are there similarities? Sure, both episodes are contained in mostly one location. Both episodes have references to their past episodes, and uses them in quite poor uses of context. But the similarities pretty much end there, and they're quite small. And comparing this episode to the Fly episode is like comparing Singing in the Rain to Mission Impossible. Fly is an incredible episode that takes focus on character study and has lots of hidden meanings and symbolism jam-packed into one episode. Nippy is an episode that focuses on how Gene can solve two problems at once, the Jeff problem and the Saul problem. One is slow in terms of pacing, and one is pretty fast-paced that turns into some weird 40s mole heist movie. Both are completely different episodes, both in terms of pacing and in terms of story, so I don't really see why people are comparing the two episodes, except that they are both kind of out of left field in terms of episode placement, and both are near the end of the season. I guess it's also kind of funny since both episodes have the same number placement. By that I mean both episodes are the 10th episode in a season. So this is a point that I can sort of get behind from people, and that is the Jeff recast. And the reason why I said I can kind of get behind it is because only one of the criticisms are valid, which is the recast being jarring to see. Of course, Jeff is barely in the show, but it's always jarring to see a character being replaced, no matter how small their role is. Personally, the recast didn't bother me at all. I'm kind of used to it now. I'm pretty sure that Vince and the writers said that even if Jeff wasn't recast, his purpose would have been the exact same in the story. So take that with what you will, but if it doesn't affect the story, then I'm not gonna mind too much, especially if it was a character who was a pretty infrequent appearance-wise in the show. However, just like Fat Todd from El Camino, I totally get the complaints about Jeff's recast, and that fact has not gone over my head. Now, where this really gets me is where people start talking about where this is where Jeff's character is ruined, or his character becomes inconsistent. And I guess I can see where you're coming from, but Jeff wasn't exactly ever a villain in this show. The only reason he was really a threatening presence to the audience and Gene is because he only knew who Gene really was. That's it. He's literally some guy who knows Gene's real identity. Take that away and you don't exactly know who he really is, so I don't know why everyone expects him to be the big bad of the show, but what's even more baffling to me is how everyone thinks it's unrealistic for Jeff to act the way he does this episode. Gene literally went inside his home, started chatting with his mother, all like it was nothing. I don't care who you are, or how goofy Saul looks. If someone you tried to intimidate is chatting with your mother and pretending not to know you, I would be scared shitless regardless of the context. It's also certain that we don't know anything about Jeff's outside life, other than that he's a cab driver dude who blackmailed Saul. So to be honest, I liked this version of Jeff. Even if the original actor played him, we still would have seen him terrified, since he thinks he has control over Saul, and now Saul has control over him. I also don't mind the recasting, like I said before, even though it's ridiculous. I made up my own theory for why the two Jeffs look alike, and that mostly has something to do with Saul's paranoia. When we see Gene, he's paranoid, he can't turn a single corner without worrying someone has named him, so when Jeff comes along, he sees him as this intimidating presence, even though in reality he's just some baby-faced man-child. At least that's how I interpreted it. That it was mostly Saul's paranoia, but saying that you thought the recast was jarring is a completely valid critique. While it didn't bother me at all, I can totally see why people would hate it, especially when the original actor of Jeff was so good.
Walter, put your dick away, Walter.
This one is pretty self-explanatory. A lot of people were complaining that this episode wasn't an episode dedicated to Walter White and Jesse Pinkman, and as much as I do love these characters, you guys need to be a bit more patient. This story isn't about Walter White or Jesse Pinkman. This is a story about a man who slowly becomes more broken over time, or as many like to call it, the Saul Goodman origin story. If you like these characters, that's fine, but the show is not about them. That's why Breaking Bad is a thing. So I'm kind of getting sick of people getting impatient about where Walt and Jesse will come in. They will eventually, just let them take their time. I really don't know what else to say except for fucking call it, okay? We all love these characters, but if we wait, then the reveal will be that much more rewarding. Unsurprisingly, many people have been complaining about this episode's black and white filter this episode. Now, if you don't like black and white filters, that's totally fine, but for an episode all about Gene, it's pretty obvious that it's all going to be in black and white. Despite what everyone says, even if you hate black and white filters, you still shouldn't skip this episode. It's got some important plot moments, and some great and integral character moments. But I really don't know how else to answer this critique except for saying it's your personal taste, and if you don't like it, then more power to you. We all have our likes and dislikes, so who am I to judge? Anyway, let's move on to the section that some of you might have been waiting for. Either that or you're just begrudgingly watching the rest of the second half of this video. I'm just going to come out and say it. I love Nippy. This episode is such a nice change of pace in the season. This episode really reminded me of an episode from season 1 or 2, and seeing it in this season gave me a weird but nice vibe to it. I think what really made me like this episode is stakes. In Better Call Saul, they kind of are forced to maneuver around situations where Jimmy is in trouble, since we know he lives throughout Breaking Bad. It's just how he makes it out alive of this mess is why we are curious. But in the Gene timeline, everything is off the table, and I was genuinely thinking when watching this episode that this could be it for Gene. That this is the one scam that gets him caught. Again, it's a very weird episode tonally, but I think they managed to find the balance between comedy and drama. I'm glad that Gene didn't get caught in this episode, but if he did, I would have been fine with that since the writers are pretty smart when it comes to that stuff. I think that the black and white aesthetic was a really nice choice, and the decision to commit with the part of it being black and white was great. It really solidified the world for me, and I'm glad that the showrunners weren't scared at all in making it black and white. What I thought was a really nice touch was this episode's different meanings. Nippy is in reference to Saul's made-up dog, which, believe it or not, if you call the number on the flyer, you'll actually get a message from Gene talking about his dog. So I thought that was pretty cute. Another meaning for Nippy is the cold, which can also be applied to this episode because it is snowing. I like the subversion of the character Marion. I thought it was going to be either someone to help Jimmy and Kim along the way, or she was going to be Walter's mother. But I'm just as pleased with this outcome. And seeing how elaborate Jimmy was to move snow and all to block Marion's path to get him to help her, which also earns her trust, was a pretty smart move on Jimmy's part. Marion as a character is just so great in this episode, and was such a neat twist I didn't see coming. I also like the scenes between Gene and Jeff. It was honestly quite cute, and tense, I suppose. I like the confrontation between Gene and Jeff, where they talk about him wanting in on the game. It's such an interesting conversation, and the fact that Saul has been around these kinds of people long enough where he can read people nearly instantly is just amazing. I think my favorite part of the episode would either have to be the intro sequence or the mall heist plan, but I'll talk about the intro first. The intro to this episode gave me goosebumps. It fucking freaked me out, and I definitely wasn't expecting it. I could tell something had changed when I heard the music was a bit distorted, but when it switched to a blue screen, I was absolutely shocked. According to Vince and the team, they do have 3 separate intros planned out for the next 3 episodes, and this makes me think that the blue screen is probably a one-time thing. This intro is definitely to signify that we are now fully in the Gene timeline, and that we are no longer in the Saul or Breaking Bad timeline. There are a lot of meanings to this intro, and if you want to know all of them, then there's plenty of analysis videos and Reddit posts that talk about it. My prediction for the Breaking Bad episode intro is that there's probably going to be an object in the intro that reflects to an object of importance in Breaking Bad. Strangely enough, this is the first episode in the season that does not go with the blank and blank format, which is surprising to me, but then I realized it was pretty smart, because they were only doing that for the episodes that were focused in the Better Call Saul timeline. Now to talk about the planning of the heist, which starts off with a montage of Gene timing the security guard on how fast he eats his Cinnabon roll. And the montage is done in such a way that it reminded me of the inflatable montage from Season 2. When that montage happened, I just had this huge smile plastered across my face. It was such a cute montage and I absolutely loved it. It made me super nostalgic for the old Better Call Saul episodes that I've recently been rewatching. I also love the tiny references made to the older Gene scenes, and not only the montage, but also the entire episode. I really love the cutback to the Saul Goodman was here message. It was all just so much fun, and I wish they did these montages more often in the previous seasons, instead of just the inflatable montage being the only exception. I also like the way that Saul walks around the shop just counting his steps. I had literally no clue what the fuck he was doing until they literally showed it to me. I really like the Jeff training scene where they just had to practice, and it really shows how greedy Saul still is, because he doesn't do low-risk scenarios. He always settles for the riskiest fucking choices I've ever seen. So at 10 items, I thought they were going to stop. But no, they went all the way up to fucking 20. I like the interactions between Saul and Jeff in that training scene, especially some specific parts of dialogue.
I'll tell you what's crazy. 50-year-old high school chemistry teacher comes into my office. The guy is so broke, he can't pay his own mortgage. 1 year later, he's got a pile of cash as big as a Volkswagen. That's crazy.
Holy shit, I'm gonna come.
I don't really know why, but I'm always going to have a thing for heist plans. They make me super giddy. And this whole pre-planning section of the episode, I could rewatch for days and never not be entertained by it. I'm also super impressed with Bob Odenkirk's acting, and with the writers too. They really make Gene feel like a completely different person to Saul. Even when he's planning out a scam, it's just insane seeing these two characters. It's like seeing Season 1 Walter White and then seeing Season 5 Walter White. I also love the heist execution. You can already tell that something is going to go wrong, and I just love how they hint at the problem earlier about the floors needing to be more polished, and then later on that turns out to be Jeff's downfall. So I wouldn't say it's convenient to the plot, since they did mention the floors being polished, Gene being too greedy, and Jeff being utterly inexperienced. All of these things combined makes for a complete disaster, and the way Gene just fucking chokes on his coffee was exactly how I was feeling in that moment. That part of the episode was probably the most tense for me. While the fall was quite goofy, it did get a laugh out of me. The fact that Saul has to try and not let the guard check the monitors gets my heart racing every time. I wouldn't say it got me as tense as the nacho scenes, or the scenes from Plan and Execution and Point and Shoot, but these writers really do know how to transform me into a nervous wreck in the span of less than 5 seconds. The fake breakdown of Gene, well, I think it's fake. It could be real or fake, but I ought to guess that parts of it were real. But it definitely reminded me of that scene from Season 5. I'm pretty sure it was from the episode 51, or Dead Freight, where Walter had to fake that mental breakdown just so he could plant a bug in Hank's office. But the whole breakdown scene was pretty disheartening to watch. You can really see the pain in Gene's eyes when he's describing every single bad thing that has happened to him. Although, again, it could be fake. In the Season 4 finale titled Winner, Saul has the same thing, only for it to be fake, and a ruse to him to get his law license back. So I have absolutely no fucking idea whether it's real or not. I also love why they did the heist in the first place, and that they established Saul's true motivations to the audience, and that is to incriminate Jeff and his brother to keep them both at bay. The whole scene was very intense, and again reminded me of that one episode from Breaking Bad where Walter says, "We're done when I say we're done." and then later in Granite State, Saul officially says that they're done. It reminded me of that scene, but actually this time Jean actually succeeded in saying that they're done. The final thing I would like to talk about is the final scene where Saul is picking out an outfit, tries it on, and ultimately puts it away. I love this scene. It shows me that Saul, as much as he wants to try and be the Saul Goodman character again, he just ultimately can't. It has to remain as plain old boring Gene Takovic. Or maybe it's a reference to Gene having to learn self-control, where as much as he wants to be Saul, he knows that those days are over and that he's grown out of it. However, I like my first assumption better. Of course, there is a lot more that I would like to talk about, but I think I'll save it for a later date and do a proper in-depth analysis on it for my Better Call Saul Season 6 review. Overall, I loved this episode. As goofy as it was at times, I really appreciated a lot of the work that the Better Call Saul team put into it, trying to make it as entertaining as possible. This episode has a lot of rewatch value to it, and I would say it's one of my top 5 episodes of Season 6, although a lot of the episodes are tied with one another, so my 5th place for Season 6 is like 3 episodes in one. I'm really liking Season 6 so far. It's definitely my favorite season of Better Call Saul so far, and I'm excited to see where it ends. I'm not going to give a rating to Nippy, since you can see it once I'm done making my Season 6 review. With Season 6 coming to an end, I'm pretty excited but also sad to see this masterpiece of a show come to an end. I really enjoyed making this video. I've started to notice that my channel has been a bit more positive as of late, but it's always nice to make a video on something I really enjoyed and that I'm passionate about. The Breaking Bad video will be out soon, probably either when Better Call Saul finishes or by the end of this month, which is August at the moment. Same with my Better Call Saul video, although depending how much I have to say about the 6th season, it could take a bit longer to release. Again, I'm not exactly sure about when videos are going to release, especially with my Stranger Things video. I'm on like multiple plot lines and it's going for pages and pages, so I really don't know what the outcome of the video will be. Either it'll be a really long video or a long video, so I don't know, 2 hours long minimum. Thank you all for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.
Walter. Put your dick away, Walter. I'm not having sex with you right now, Walter.